The first rays of sunlight slowly broke through the clouds, revealing the coastline of Normandy. For just a few seconds, it looked calm, peaceful, almost beautiful. Then, the silence vanished. The thunder of Allied battleships shook the sea. Hundreds of heavy naval guns fired together. Shell after shell screamed across the sky, crashing into German bunkers, cliff tops, gun batteries, and fortified strongpoints. Columns of smoke rose thousands of feet into the air. The coastline disappeared beneath explosions. To the men waiting offshore, it looked as if nothing could have survived. But they were wrong. Inside the landing craft, the soldiers could feel every blast through the steel hull. The floor trembled beneath their boots. Some stared at the deck. Others gripped their rifles so tightly their knuckles turned white. Nobody spoke. There was nothing left to say. Many of the young men aboard were barely 18 years old. Some had never traveled farther than the next state before joining the army. Now, they were about to step into history. The landing craft pushed steadily toward the beach, closer and closer. The roar of the naval bombardment slowly faded. Then, a different sound took its place, the sharp crack of machine gun fire. German defenders had survived. Deep inside reinforced concrete bunkers, hidden in trenches, and protected by thick layers of steel and stone, they waited for the perfect moment. Streams of bullets ripped across the water. Tracer rounds skipped over the waves like deadly sparks. Mortar shells exploded between the approaching boats. One landing craft disappeared in a towering column of water. Another burst into flames. Still, the others kept coming. There was no turning back. The soldiers knew that once the ramps dropped, everything would change. As the beach drew closer, faces became visible through the smoke. The defenders were waiting, machine guns already aimed at the incoming boats. Every second felt like an hour. Finally, the order came. Drop the ramp. The heavy steel door slammed into the water. Instantly, chaos erupted. Machine gun bullets poured through the opening. Several soldiers were hit before they could even move. Others leaped into the surf. Many expected waist-deep water. Instead, some found themselves in water over their heads. Each man carried nearly 80 pounds of equipment: rifles, ammunition, grenades, medical kits, food, extra ammunition, radio batteries. For those who couldn't free themselves in time, the sea became a grave. They vanished beneath the waves, never reaching the shore. Those who made it out struggled toward the beach. Bullets struck the water around them. Sand erupted with every impact. Men crawled, fell, stood again, and kept moving. Ahead of them stood Omaha Beach, the most heavily defended landing zone of the entire invasion. Towering cliffs overlooked the shoreline. Concrete bunkers gave German gunners perfect fields of fire. Every defensive position supported another. Crossfire covered nearly every inch of sand. There was almost nowhere to hide. Yet despite the overwhelming fire, the invasion had only just begun. The beach had become a battlefield unlike anything most of the soldiers had ever imagined. Smoke drifted across the sand. Burning landing craft littered the shoreline. Destroyed vehicles lay half submerged in the surf. The cries of the wounded mixed with the relentless roar of machine guns and artillery. Every attempt to move forward seemed impossible. Pinned behind small seawalls, steel obstacles, and shallow craters, American soldiers fought simply to stay alive. Officers who had led the first waves were among the earliest casualties. Radio operators struggled to establish contact. Entire platoons became separated. Some units had lost nearly all of their leaders within minutes. For a brief moment, it seemed the invasion might collapse before it had truly begun. But wars are not always decided by generals. Sometimes, they are decided by ordinary people making extraordinary choices. Small groups of soldiers began acting on their own. Without waiting for orders, they searched for any path forward. A rifleman crawled through enemy fire, reached a German machine gun position, and silenced it with grenades. Another soldier repeatedly crossed open sand to pull wounded comrades to safety. Engineers worked under constant fire, clearing mines and cutting gaps through barbed wire.
Many knew they would never survive. They kept working anyway. Every obstacle removed, every bunker destroyed, created another opportunity for the men behind them. Slowly, almost inch by inch, the Allies began pushing inland. Meanwhile, out at sea, American naval commanders realized something critical. The bombardment had not destroyed enough of the German defenses. If the soldiers on the beach were to survive, the Navy had to get closer, much closer. Several U.S. destroyers broke formation and steamed toward the coastline. It was an incredibly dangerous decision. The water was shallow. Hidden sandbars and underwater obstacles threatened to tear the ships apart. German artillery batteries immediately opened fire. Yet the destroyers continued forward. Some came within only a few hundred yards of the beach. From that distance, their guns were devastating. 5-inch naval shells slammed directly into German bunkers. Concrete walls cracked apart. Observation posts collapsed. Machine gun nests that had terrorized the beach suddenly fell silent. For the first time that morning, the defenders' fire began to weaken. The soldiers trapped below noticed the difference immediately. The opportunity they had been waiting for had finally arrived. Using shell holes for cover, they advanced toward the steep bluffs overlooking Omaha Beach. Some climbed with ropes. Others gripped roots, rocks, and broken branches. Many climbed with nothing but their hands. Every few feet, enemy bullets forced them to flatten against the hillside. Every meter gained came at a terrible cost. But they refused to stop. The impossible was slowly becoming possible. By midday, the battle had begun to turn. Small groups of American soldiers reached the top of the cliffs. From there, they attacked the German defenses from the rear. Bunkers that had dominated the beach for hours were cleared one by one. Machine guns fell silent. Artillery positions were abandoned. The seemingly unstoppable Atlantic Wall had finally been breached. Meanwhile, far behind the front lines, confusion spread through the German high command. Reports poured in from Normandy. Some officers insisted this was the main invasion. Others believed it was only a diversion. They expected the real attack to come at Pas-de-Calais. That single mistake would prove disastrous. Even Adolf Hitler remained convinced that Normandy was not the Allies' primary objective. Several powerful panzer divisions, the armored reserve Germany desperately needed, were not released immediately. Hours passed. Those lost hours gave the Allies exactly what they needed. More landing craft reached the beaches. More soldiers poured ashore. Tanks, artillery, ammunition, and supplies followed wave after wave. What had begun as a desperate fight for survival slowly transformed into a secure basehead. By nightfall, more than 156,000 Allied troops had landed across the 5 invasion beaches. Thousands had been killed, wounded, or were still missing. For many families, June 6, 1944, would forever be remembered as the day everything changed. The sands of Omaha Beach were stained with sacrifice. Every yard of ground had been paid for with courage. Every step forward had cost another life. Yet those sacrifices were not in vain. The success of D-Day marked the beginning of the liberation of Western Europe. It opened the door for Allied forces to push across France, liberate Belgium, cross the Rhine, and eventually enter the heart of Nazi Germany. Less than a year later, the Third Reich would collapse. The war in Europe would come to an end. But on that cold morning in Normandy, none of that was certain. The soldiers stepping off those landing craft could not see the future. They didn't know if they would survive the next minute, let alone witness victory. They simply kept moving, not because they were fearless, but because the mission demanded it. History often remembers great battles through maps, generals, and strategies. But D-Day was won by ordinary men and refused to give up under impossible conditions. Their courage changed the course of World War II. Their sacrifice helped restore freedom to millions. And more than 80 years later, the beaches of Normandy remain silent witnesses to one of the greatest acts of bravery in human history. Every cross in the military cemeteries, every weathered bunker overlooking the sea, and every wave that reaches the shore serves as a reminder of the price of freedom. Because on June 6, 1944, the fate of Europe, and perhaps the world, was decided not only by armies, but by the determination of thousands of ordinary people who found the strength to take one more step forward.